Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Avengers call. It's the 4th of April, and it's about 8 o'clock. Wait, it is 8 o'clock, actually. Hopefully one of you or some of you can just drop in the chat. Just make sure you can hear me okay. I'm not talking to myself before we rattle on. As usual, there's plenty for us to discuss tonight, and Adam's told me I'm loud and clear, so perfect. Okay, on tonight's session, then, what are we going to cover? Well, as the title of the thumbnail suggested, we're going to have a look at Dogecoin. We're going to have a look at Elon and the influence that Elon has basically over the crypto market and what that generally means for us and potentially how we can play that. As always, we will look at some news, including some Binance FUD. We'll look at an update on Doge and even sort of some of the struggles that UK crypto-related businesses are having. I don't think any of us will be surprised by those. We have a research token today, and that is Oasis Network. The ticker is known as ROSE. So we'll have a look through that, see what it is. As always, we are going to cover BTC. We'll certainly be having a look at Doge and where that could be going, but we'll also concentrate on other altcoins as well, with a little focus towards Ethereum, given that the Shanghai unlock is a week tomorrow. If you've got any questions, then please just populate them in the chat. And what I'll do is I'll just periodically look down and we'll go through any of those. But other than that, we'll just get cracking. Okay, so just a little overview before we jump into the news. The standard chart that I have here, BTC at the top, we can see we've just been ranging. We've been ranging for a couple of weeks now. I'm not going to bother knocking onto the weekly chart. We'll do that later. But it's been pretty flat, few wicks. But we've effectively gone from around about 27k to we've touched just over 29,000 twice. So that's the set range at the moment. Activity today hasn't really broken out of that range. And yeah, we're waiting for a move. Typically, when we see flat periods like this, we do normally see some form of explosive move. So it'll be interesting to see which direction that goes and how we can, interact with that and hopefully make some good trades based on it. What is interesting, if we look down onto the bottom left now, the dollar just continuing to melt. And I don't really have time to go over it in the news, but I know Bijan has been putting plenty of content out there on the Discord channel. Just the amount of countries that are coming out at the moment and just saying that, their primary focus isn't necessarily the US dollar. We've got Saudi Arabia, we've got China, Brazil, Russia, Malaysia. We've got loads of countries. Too many to list, to be perfectly honest with you. And we are seeing that the dollar has been melting, continuing to melt. If I just bring this one up just a little bit closer, it enlarges. For me, very broad brush, I'm just looking to see how it interacts around 101. We've seen some previous support at that level. It feels like this is the level it's going to head down to before making a decision on what it's going to do. Obviously, an uptick in the Dixie certainly will have a negative correlation with equities and stocks. However, it feels that cryptos and BTC certainly have kind of broken away from that over the past couple of weeks. So no guarantee on where that's going to do with cryptos. We've got Ethereum, and the reason I want to talk about it at the moment is whilst BTC has been ranging, Ethereum's actually been steadily climbing. Whether or not that has anything to do with next week's hard fork, we'll have to just wait and see. But we'll certainly have a look at what the implications of that might be. And then again, just on the US 500, the S&P, again, we've had a decent bounce, which is what to be expected given what we've seen with the dollar. Okay, let's jump straight into the news. So just going to cover a couple of articles that we may have missed today, this week, because there's been plenty going on. And one of them is here at the UK. As individual retail investors, we've all experienced the pain of trying to get a UK bank account to allow money to be transferred from your own account to a cryptocurrency account. And it seems that crypto companies are having exactly the same issues. Now, the UK government, to its credit, has sort of taken a much friendlier stance towards cryptocurrencies than perhaps the United States has, and to be fair, so is the EU as well. But what companies are now finding is they're coming over, they're setting up here, but they're struggling to get banks to actually allow them to set up a company bank account. And I have to say that in 2018, when I set my company bank account, it's exactly the same. It's quite difficult. I did manage to get it with Yorkshire Bank at the moment. That got transferred across to Virgin, and they've never really complained about it. But I do wonder if at some stage someone's going to realise and maybe ask a couple of questions. However, Sunak's crypto plans are hit by reluctant UK banks. I'm not going to go through the article, but just to say that actually now these cryptocurrency companies are, trying to lean on the government to effectively have a word with the UK banks and see if they will, take a more softer, that's not great English, but a softer approach to allowing cryptocurrency companies to set up bank accounts. And as sort of an interim, what we're finding is that companies are having to use, where is it down here? I've missed it. Certainly the Swift network, but I'm trying to find where, not the Swift, sorry. This is what happens when you don't highlight stuff when you're trying to look through. So having to use other platforms like ClearJunction and PaySafe financial services to allow sort of transactions. Stripe, that's the one I was thinking of, not Swift, to go through. So that there are workarounds from it, but if we are going to be this crypto-friendly nation, then really our banks need to align with that. And I'm not suggesting that the government's going to have any sway over these banks. Most of them are not actually headquartered in the United Kingdom. So it'll be interesting to see what that happens. And if any developments do come, we'll certainly talk about it, because hopefully that will filter down into the retail sector. Nothing yet. Okay. Moving on to Do Kwon's extradition. So we covered his arrest last week, and I'm not going to go through any of that again. But what we did talk about was there's a host of countries that are vying for him to be extradited to them: South Korea, Singapore, and the United States. And we thought that we were going to get a fairly swift resolution on this. But actually, I was quite surprised because, I didn't think COVID was still a thing and only the United States recognized it. But it turns out that Montenegro still have a COVID policy in place. So he wasn't allowed to be visited by anyone but his lawyer until yesterday. So we haven't actually had an opportunity for him to be before a judge and for any cases to be heard about extradition. So it looks like there was a slight delay on the timelines there. Probably going to have something going to happen in the next 30 days, because that's how long he could be held for. Bear in mind, it's already been 2 weeks. I'm assuming there's probably actually only 2 weeks before we'll find out where that goes. His legal team are imploring that he serves time in Montenegro. I'm not sure if he'll agree to that when he sees the states of the prisons, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Something that we covered at length towards the back end of last year, and I think it was one of the bearish indicators that a lot of us held on to, was about potential miner capitulation and what that may do to the markets. And well, actually, an article that's just come out today has kind of turned that on its head a little bit there. So I'm going to read a little bit of this just because we spent so much time talking about it last year. I think it's important that we sort of really understand what's potentially going on, because I don't think any of us have kept a significant eye on it. But Bitcoin miner Marathon Digital produces a record 2,195 BTC in Q1 of 2023. So Marathon Digital Holdings has reported it mined a record 2,195 Bitcoin in the first quarter. The mining company also increased its hash rate by 64%. Marathon Holdings, one of the largest mining companies in North America and the world, released its first quarter operations report stating that it mined a record. This article just repeats itself, so we'll skip that. By improving our hash rate, we increased our Bitcoin production by 41% from the prior quarter to a record of 2,195 Bitcoin. This guy must have been paid by the amount of times he got that in. In March, we produced a record 825, which is a 21% increase from the prior month. So we can actually see that they are doing very well. The mining company added that during that period, it had increased operational hash rate by 64%, we already talked about, from 7 exahashes to 11.5 exahashes. Marathon, this is what I wanted to cover, reduced its debt by 50 million and terminated its credit facilities with Silvergate Bank. Obviously, you're following the bank of that. But the point there is we were all worried or concerned that these mining facilities were running out of money. The cost of energy was continuing to go up. The price of Bitcoin was going down. But what we've actually now seen is whilst the price has been surging, they've also been able to produce more. It means that they've been able to sell that, pay off any debts that they've had. And I'm not saying that they're out of the woods, but they're certainly in a much more stable position. Now, we only have one company, and there are many other mining companies out there. But it's just something to think about, because, if you've cast your mind back to November and December, and this is, one of our canary in the coal mines, if you will, thinking that perhaps this is what's going to cause the next implosion. And maybe actually the sentiment and the narrative has changed given where we've seen with the uptick of price. So definitely something to just bear in mind. Okay, moving on to the next article. Oops, scroll to the top. Now, you all must have heard about this. It's happened yesterday. And there was some further FUD that was sent around crypto Twitter relating to a alleged red notice issued from Interpol against CZ, the CEO of Binance. Now, despite what we're going to talk about a little bit later on with Elon Musk's little escapades with Doge and Twitter, this came off the back of that and actually caused the market to dump, I think, about $1,000 at the time, although it recovered quite well, but it did drop down to about 27,200. Now, the rumors of the Interpol red notice issued to Changpei Zhao began circulating on Twitter yesterday. CZ has taken to the platform to state the rumor was false. Now, initially, he always says the FUD is false. Now, it does turn out that this seems to be the case, but it was the latest attempt to effectively smear Binance and CZ. This is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. I'm just going to try and go through it all, not in the massive technical details, but just a gentle reminder about just always just trying to validate information before we start making any presumptions about how we should be trading. But the rumor allegedly began circulating following a tweet from Kobe on Twitter. We'll go through that a little bit later on. The tweet was a sheer 256 hash, which read, and I ain't reading that, but effectively some coding. People then attempted to decode that to reveal what the meaning behind it was, which when translated said Interpol red notice for CZ. So just those 5 words. The rumor spread through Twitter like wildfire, as does every piece of FUD surrounding CZ and Binance. CZ then took to Twitter to clarify the situation by tweeting, if you panic sell on FUD or on Photoshop signatures, well, you aren't likely to become rich. Block the FUD sources. So let's start having a look at some of these. So this was CZ's response. He obviously did a few, but obviously we had 4, which is standard abbreviation for FUD, the one we just read out. He then goes through the circumstances of it. So this is a red notice. It's been photoshopped to have his face down in the bottom, and I'll verify how we know that's not true a little bit later on. But the fact that there was no family name, forename, or nationality in the search engine probably suggests why we can at least begin to believe it's FUD. He then goes through. But what's interesting is he retweets this one. I needed 5 minutes of research to understand it, but I'm not interested in the first 2. It's where he says Kobe had nothing to do with it. Now, he may have innocently just retweeted that and not read that last line, but if anything from the article and the rest of Twitter was to go by, this Kobe individual did this maliciously. And we even had a few influencers calling him out that if he had done this deliberately, causing, I think it's about $50 million worth in liquidations, then, people should be looking to press charges on him. But, and we'll go down here, the truth to the FUD. So Kobe then clarified the rumor in the early hours of Tuesday morning by stating that he had posted that SHA or SHA-256 hash of rumors over 20 times in the last year without the secret being revealed. So I don't particularly follow this individual, so I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I've got no reason to say that it isn't. I unfortunately wasn't able to verify it because he's had such backlash. He's actually locked his account, so you can't see anything at the moment. Kobe then added, looks like someone I discussed the rumor with, handful of possible people, leaked the seed to cause a stir at my expense, removing the context of the rumor, etc. I still don't quite get that. So for the last year, he's posted 20 times that there's a potential rumor about this red notice. And then because someone decoded it, he's like saying, oh, well, it was, I don't know, a joke or it was just false. I don't really understand why he was doing it in the first place. But as it says here, CZ appeared to acknowledge and reciprocate what Kobe had clarified by retweeting it. So it appears like CZ's not got any particular beef with Kobe. But it's just a prime example, once again, that, a pretty large name within the industry, gets a pretty significant piece of FUD thrown against him, market reacts, and then, you know, an hour later, everything seems to be covered. And when I saw it, the first thing I did was, you know, went into Google search engine and just, you know, I wonder, Interpol, you know, can you actually view red notices? So it's exactly what I typed in, and lo and behold, you can view it. So all you have to do is type in, oops, no, his name, hit search, and there you go. There's no indications of him. And just to clarify, I want to just have nothing in there. You can see that absolutely everyone. So if we go back to that original picture, see this person's torso, and then they obviously got CZ next to him, and it's quite clear that person's torso is still there. But number one, they've just gone and photoshopped over the top of that, and that's all it was. So, I mean, the quality of the photos on here are pretty poor, so it's quite easy to potentially be able to Photoshop that. But that's as simple as it was. It took me less than 5 minutes, as that other person had done, to prove that that wasn't there. So yeah, just again, just a friendly reminder, we are still in that transition between bull and bear. I suppose there's fights between both sides. People are trying to drive the market in a way that suits them, whether they are large organizations or just individuals. So whatever you read, you know, just try and verify it. I still fall victim to it. I'll admit that I do, but I always try and just sort of back it up no matter what I read. And sometimes it can be quite difficult to find a source, but yeah, just got to bear that in mind. Just checking everyone's still there. Yep, no questions yet. Perfect. Well, I'm going to move on to the next one. I don't mean to talk about this for too long. It's just something that I missed last week, so we were quite a bit busy. But actually, at the end of March, we were honored and blessed, really, to be provided with the economic report from the President of the United States. And whilst I have absolutely zero intention of even reading 513 pages of it, I'm certainly not going to go through the huge amount. But what is interesting is this report has an entire section dedicated to what I did also find interesting is within the 513 pages that you see in front of you, there's not a single section or paragraph, I believe, but I haven't read every single paragraph, certainly section and subsection, that addresses the potential risk that the current traditional financial banking system holds. So yeah, still a bit of work to do there, and quite interesting. But what did tickle me, oh, I need to go scroll down, so you have to wait till I get past all of the gumph and who wrote what. So we get into here. There's a little bit, to be fair, first few pages it talks about maybe the potential benefits there, but it's this section here. Cryptocurrency assets are mostly speculative income vehicles. Oh no, not the one with the cryptocurrencies generally do not perform all the functions of money as effectively as sovereign money, such as the US dollar. And when they see such as the US dollar, only the US dollar is all they refer to. So I will post this one in Discord. Feel free to have a look through. But you know, this section alone was quite an interesting take of propaganda towards the US dollar, and certainly made me chuckle a little bit. Okay, that's pretty much the news. Is there any questions anyone has before we move on to the next section? I will give it 30 seconds. Okay, no worries. Well, we'll minimize this and we'll come back to it. I think what we'll do now is we'll have a look at Oasis Network. So thanks to Bijan for this one. He asked if I would cover Oasis Network. Oasis Network, also known as Rose, in case you've seen him talk about it. I'd have to admit it's not something that was particularly on my radar till I started looking into it. I've got, as always, a little script that I'm going to run through. But I think it is an interesting project. So some of the ones previously I haven't done a little 10-minute summary video, but I will do one on this one. Because I think there's some potential to have a look at what this can offer. But in a nutshell, I mean, you probably already can see from what it says there, but the Oasis Network is a decentralized privacy blockchain. So we are talking about privacy coins. Now, we covered one of those recently when we talked about Dash, and a lot of my views and summaries on the whole privacy coin sector haven't changed. However, I did want to have a look at this and see if there's any benefits from this. So whilst we didn't really cover it in terms of Dash, I'm going to try and just explain a little bit more about the network and the blockchain that this is, and how that's going to operate, to try and give a bit of context to potentially some growth and some opportunities in the future. So traditional blockchain platforms, as we know, they provide a secure but transparent transactional network. But they don't always provide, or they don't provide the privacy, the full privacy that some people may require. And this is where a privacy-based blockchain, such as Oasis Network, comes into play. Because Oasis Network uses a combination of privacy and security and certain mechanisms. They call them secure enclaves. I'm sorry, again, it's back to the time where I don't really understand a lot of the terminology. A couple of those is trusted execution environments, or T's when we get into the white paper. Another one is homomorphic encryption. Sorry, both of those go straight above my head. But these are a variety of different methods to ensure that the information that is recorded on the blockchain is only available to certain people. So whilst you may know that a transaction has taken place, the details of that transaction are limited to who can know about it. Now, this enables both secure and private data sharing, as well as collaboration between multiple parties who may not want the outside world to know. And as such, there is a definite use case. If you think about where we currently are and the need for privacy, and whilst we all have a digital identity, we may not want that full digital identity to be exposed on any particular blockchain. And what our Oasis Network is effectively doing is providing a platform to be able to just cherry pick certain information that can be shared with key third parties, but the rest of your digital passport or your digital identity remains both secretive, secure, confidential, anonymous, whatever acronym you want to use. So Oasis Network, we will go into it in a little bit more detail, but effectively it sits in between an individual or in between a company and another company, business, product, whatever. And effectively I was going to have to say it's got a consensus network, and it uses the things called paradigms, which we're going to go into. But in a nutshell, it allows for you to provide that information, and then whatever dApps you're using and through confidential smart contracts, takes out the information that you do not want to be shared, and then passes on the other information to the third party, the information which, yes, they've requested, but that is all they can gain access to. I don't normally jump straight into the white paper, but here is the white paper. I mean, it's one of those ones which is just all text. So, it depends if that's something that you're particularly comfortable in reading. The project was actually founded in 2018. The white paper actually came out in June 2023. It's not necessarily a problem there. We'll have a look a little bit later on with tokenomics about when they launched the token. But yeah, it just goes through what I'm about to summarize. It takes 20 pages. I'm going to take 3 minutes. It goes into a lot better detail because they are more knowledgeable about this kind of stuff than I particularly am. But we're going to start using terms like consensus layers and paradigms, which is very similar but not the same, to the Polkadot network. There are some elements where people might think it's very akin to sharding a little bit later on as well, with terms about scalability and everything else, and they've definitely had some aspects within all of that. It goes into talking about how the consensus network works, what the relationship is with the paradigm network. Network goes through there. The reason I brought this up is it talks about this private computation runtime. So these are some of the secure enclaves that I ended up butchering. So I can't remember what it was called now. Trusted execution environments, or the T security model. So it explains what that is, how that works, what potential vulnerabilities are, and how they look to overlook it. So it's got all that kind of detail within there. What the white paper doesn't hold, though, is the information on tokenomics and a few other those things. That information is available. It's just not available in the white paper. So we'll go through that in a moment's time. And I know what you're thinking. You're just thinking, well, this is just another layer one project, layer one network. And, they're a dime a dozen. We've got so many blockchains out there. And you can be forgiven for being absolutely right, because whilst every layer one blockchain tries to suggest that it's different from the other one, it has different utilities, etc., they all effectively just serve that, what's the word I'm looking for? trilemma, the scalability trilemma. That's it, which is decentralization, security, and scalability. Now, where Oasis Network is potentially different is it actually offers a further dimension to that, and that confidentiality. So arguably you could call that, can't someone help me, a quadrilemma? I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe that's what it could be. Just 2 seconds. It looks like I've just got some fuzziness with my screen. So I'll just be 2 seconds. Oh, it looks like it's clearing up. Apologies there. I thought I was about to lose the stream. There's reports of internet's going down all over the place. If you use Virgin Media, you might be suffering from that. Yeah, so quadrilemma, I suppose. Anyway, it has 4 prongs potentially to this. So yes, it is like every other layer 1 blockchain. However, because of that confidentiality, that privacy side of things, maybe this does have something else to offer. Now, I already kind of touched upon privacy coins, but they are there for sort of entrepreneurial people. And I know a lot of negative connotations are thrown about with privacy networks, privacy coins, and who could be using them. But if we just try and put that to one side and actually think about a genuine use case for what they can be, then, you know, a privacy network allows you to make transactions with other people without third parties, busybodies, competitors, I don't know, rogue elements or whatever, having full transparency on the transaction one. Now, to give you a sort of a bit of an example, if I can try and find it. Oh yeah, so I was chatting with someone over the weekend, actually, and we were talking about something very similar. And as soon as I started looking into this, I reached out to them because I was like, this is something we have discussed. But if you take healthcare information as a prime example, so most people would argue that their own personal medical records are fairly sensitive. They're, you know, people don't really want to be sharing their medical records with anybody or everybody, and really just want to kind of isolate that within there. So there is a genuine use case, in Oasis Network talk about the healthcare sector quite a bit, where you could use a privacy blockchain to just provide medical information, whether that be to a particular doctor because you have some concerns of something, or just for medical research, where you're not providing your entire medical history, you're just providing a select amount of it, and who you're providing to is secured by that. So if you then went to think, well, what else could we do? Well, actually, there's a financial side of that. You know, when people are going for mortgages, the amount of information, financial information we have to provide, you wouldn't want to put that on a public blockchain, and so everybody can see all of that. But if you could have a private blockchain where you just send it to a particular party and they only get to see the information that is actually pertinent to your mortgage, absolutely, I think there's some benefit towards that. Now, one of the interesting things, I've got some little notes to tell me when to change the page, just so you guys aren't looking at the same page each time. We'll come back to this one, but just one of the interesting things about this is this term here, data tokenization. And this is something that I'm sure a lot of projects are gonna be looking to do. But here they are basically saying that it allows you to tokenize your data. So you can firstly choose who accesses the information, as I mentioned, but more importantly, you can actually also earn money from people accessing your data. Now, the use case that they talk about is effectively creating it as an NFT. So for those of you that aren't aware and maybe not dealt with NFTs before, anyone who does create an NFT, if that goes on to be sold, you can write in a piece of code within a smart contract that allows you to have a percentage of every ongoing transaction relating to that NFT. Now, they can range to whatever you set, but I've seen them from 0.5% up to 10%. Doesn't really necessarily matter, but the fact that you could write that into the script every time your data is used, you are personally getting paid for that, which will come on to why that's potentially an interesting use case in it. Well, now, if you think about the social media industry, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, you know, they are free for us to sign up to. And generally, my rule of thumb, if it's free for me to use, it's because I am the product. And that's exactly what it is. They are harvesting my data. So everything that I put in there, whatever it is, interests I like, people that I interact with, all of that kind of stuff, that is data that they just get to harvest. and they just get to use, and they can sell on that data, and that's how they make billions. Now, we willingly give that information to the social media industry for free. We don't get paid for that. None of us ever benefit from it, and none of us seem to really care. But what happens if actually it comes a point where we can still input that data, but it's our own digital identity, and then if social media platforms want it, they have to effectively purchase our NFT to get that information. Every time that's then sold on to another marketing company or whoever it is, we're getting a little bit of money back. Suddenly that actually might be of interest to people. So that again is something that I think has some actual legs to it, and I could potentially see it in the future. I'm not saying that it is going to knock the social media industry on its ass. Also, we're talking billions of dollars worth of revenue for the social media networks. I'm sure they'll try and find a way to maybe not fight this, but work their way into it. And what I would say is we're going to talk about partnerships a little bit later on, but Oasis Network have actually already established a partnership with Meta, so Facebook and Instagram. So whether or not Facebook, Instagram, Meta are doing that for nefarious reasons, just because they want to get their foot in the door and see what's happening, I don't know. But they are actually already starting to roll it out. So at least on the surface, Meta sees some sort of, use case within this. And what I would say is, I talked about before that, defining what potentially is the next sector. The 2021 bull run, play to earns, move to earns, all those kind of stuff. Well, maybe data to earn. I've just made up that term, but maybe data is going to be what is driving that. And so, it established itself, as you can see in the really small roadmap here in 2018. We started to roll out at the end of the last bull run in 2021 in terms of the token. But the product's been building now for, a good 4 years. And so they've got some stuff within there. There is an ecosystem, which we'll have a look at a little bit later on. One thing that I saw when I was reading it, and I skipped over it, sorry, but actually Instagram have used the Oasis network as a trial. It was effectively a poll was sent out. They were trying to harvest. They were trying to just gauge user information about age, race, weight, gender, all these kind of things. And it was done through the Oasis network. So whilst that information was then able to be provided to whoever it was, I'm not sure, the rest of the profile of that person, those individuals, were not provided within there. So they are trialing it out there. It does seem to be used. And then there's other companies that have been looking at, and I can't remember the name of them. I'm going to have to scroll down through my notes. Sorry, 2 seconds. Nebula Genomics. So people that are collecting DNA and genetic information, that's a pretty big company to do it. Obviously, that is incredibly sensitive and valuable information there. And so they don't want to be transferring all of that across. They want to be very selective of what information has been provided. So they're now looking at how they can use the Oasis network to just provide that confidence to the individuals that are providing that data, that it's not going to be just thrown, everything's going to be thrown out. It's going to be very selective of what happens. Hopefully that will then build in the trust that people have to actually provide that information, whether that be used for research or finding out what percentage of European and Chinese you are. I don't know. Okay. So I just want to touch on, if I can find it, a couple of these things. So I mentioned them before, consensus layer and paratime layers. And it is similar to effectively how Polkadot works. So with Polkadot, we have the consensus layer, the relay chain, and then we also have the parachains, which feed off that. People can apply to effectively buy a 2-year slot of a parachain. Then they can develop whatever application they want off that. And they can work within isolation without actually impacting the consensus mechanism of the Polkadot network. And that's how it works. And this is exactly the same for Oasis. They just have different terminology within that. So where you see parachain from Polkadot, it's actually now a paratime layer. And I don't believe they do it through auctions. I don't think the demand is there where they have got, overrun with that. So forgive me if they do. It's not something that I came across when I was having a look at it. Now, it goes on here, I think I covered it. Allows for the decentralization of network for anyone can develop on it. So as you say, we're not touching the consensus layer where decisions can be made and everything else. It's just people just buy allocations of the outer layer. Now, this was the interesting thing that I saw a claim, but with nothing that backed it up particularly. But Oasis claimed that it is superior to Polkadot. Well, of course it's going to say that, isn't it? I'm not saying that it's not, by the way. And more efficient than the sharding that you get on the Near protocol. Now, this effectively is something to do with smaller replications for the same amounts or same energy output that the security requires. Again, didn't really necessarily mean much to me. One of the things that did stick in my head was transaction speed. So each paratime can do 1,000 transactions per second, which doesn't sound like too much, as in, okay, yeah, it's much better than Ethereum and Bitcoin, don't get me wrong. But when you actually think that there are 1,000 paratimes, then 1,000 times 1,000, if it was full to capacity, it could actually do 1 million transactions per second. So suddenly there's definitely not the demand for it at the moment, but we can see that actually they've got a lot of opportunity for that scalability and not getting swamped through anything else. Oh, this was about homomorphic encryption and that TEE, so we don't really need to talk about that one because I've covered it. Okay, in terms of partnerships, so there's some pretty big names in partnerships. I'm going to try and go as quick as we can because it's going A16Z, anyone that is actually interested in researching tokens, you know that they're a big player within the industry. Electric Capital, exactly the same. Dragonfly, Binance Labs. So Binance Labs and Oasis Labs, who are the company that own Oasis Networks, they've created this thing called Alliance, which uses the Oasis network to share security threat information across exchanges. So we're talking some of the biggest exchanges here. They get to share information and concerns that they particularly have without having to give up all of their secrets about how their exchanges run. So good to see that someone like Binance, the biggest exchange in the world, has backed these people and has taken them on board. BMW did something in the early days. I've not seen anything to say they've done anything recently. I'm not just it's BMW Group, so it's a lot bigger than just BMW there. Nebula Genomics. God, I can't speak today. I've already mentioned them. I've mentioned Meta. I've seen some unconfirmed names of healthcare firms that have been using it as well. The names were redacted or not produced because they were saying there was a need for privacy. So they've definitely got some within there. They've got the backing and the funding from some pretty big players that like to do, institutional investors and VC firms within the crypto space that like to support up and coming projects. In terms of information that's on the website, if we just go back to the beginning, the website doesn't necessarily offend me. There's, it's not loads of information that's thrown in front of your face. It's relatively easy to navigate through different things, clicking through there. I still wouldn't, what's wrong with having a little search box so I can just find stuff a bit easier? That's just being me. But whether you are just someone that is interested in it, or if you're actually a developer that wants to build on it, there's plenty of information within there. Most things you just find out and you click on them and off you go. So generally a relatively user-friendly website with a decent amount of information, and the links all seem to work in the place you're going, which is better than the last few tokens we've looked at. We do get regular updates on things like the roadmaps, and the blog generally seems to be updated very well, very quickly, which is good to see. Again, go back to that first one. This is the best enlarged image I could find of the roadmap, which isn't great. But then they provide these monthly blogs. The only problem with a monthly blog is you kind of need to be, really up to speed with what they said they were going to achieve in each one. Whereas at least it is telling you that they are producing things, they are moving forward with it, which is great to see. And again, if this is something that you are interested in, then you can certainly just be reading these month by month. It obviously keeps the information in terms of 25,000 transactions on February the 8th, which is the highest it's been. Obviously, the amount of validators are there and everything else, good to know. So plenty of information for you to find. What we really wanted to talk about, though, is the tokenomics of Oasis Network. And as I mentioned to you, the ticker is ROSE. Now, there are a few roses out there, so when you type it into search, just make sure it says Oasis Network. We see the price at the moment is just under 6 cents. It's got a market cap of 300 million. About $52 million worth of 24-hour trading volumes, and a fully diluted valuation of just under $600 million. Why have we got that number from? Well, that's all to do with the max supply versus circulating supply. So the maximum supply of Rose tokens is 10 billion, and there's just over 50% of 5 billion 29 million tokens currently in circulating supply. We're going to have a look at a little bit at tokenomics a bit later on. And if we have a look at this chart down here, can I enlarge it? I'm on CoinGecko. I did do this on CoinMarketCap, but CoinMarketCap actually had it as 5 billion 700 million, but the data I see seems to suggest that this is the correct number. So I've stuck with CoinGecko. Anyway, what can we see from this? Well, the all-time high traded price was just under 60 cents. So it's about 90% down from where it is, or 10x from its current position to all-time high. And this was actually, I mean, it did come out in the bull run, didn't do so well in the first peak. If you think about first peak in April and May 2021, but it's still relatively new then. And I'm sure some will argue that a 6x is pretty good, but it actually started to see a real good run up, and it certainly sprung higher well after the rest of the market, or the majority of the market, collapsed in November. So yeah, there was just some positive push with this. It's quite heavily pushed by a few social media accounts at the time. That's not necessarily a bad thing. When I was doing some research, there are still some videos floating around at the moment, so it's good to see that there is some interest within that. In terms of the token metrics and distribution, because this is, you know, one of the things we are interested in. I'd already mentioned to you there was 10 billion tokens, and that's kind of split up. Well, I think around about 75% of those, so 7.5 billion tokens, are held by the team, and then about 2.5 billion tokens are effectively staking rewards. So yes, this is a layer 1 protocol. Any guesses for what the token is used for? There's 4 things: transaction fees, staking, governance, and I've actually forgotten the fourth now. But it's the same as every other layer 1 token. So yeah, that's where it is. But we can see the backers, the core contributors, community and ecosystem, the foundations, the strategic partners, basically all team ones hold the vast majority of those, as a detail of what they are. And in terms of the circulating supply, so 1.5 billion tokens were released at time of issue, and you can see that the breakdown there, the vast majority of those were backers. So 759 million. And I do like how they've broken this down, so it's quite easy to read. We're currently on this grey line here at the moment. If we scroll that up, we can see it's just over 5 billion. And then we can see the breakdown of everybody who got their strategic partners, 112, 1.25 billion from community and ecosystem, foundation endowments 350 million, 2.3 billion from backers, and the core contributors is about just over a billion. So so we had 2 very large steps that got us to roughly where we are at the moment, and now we've got the inflation rate that's effectively eking out, and will be eking out well beyond 2030, because even at 2030 at this rate, we still are only around about 7.5 billion. Now, in terms of inflation, the token, it originally started out at 12%. I'm sure, here we go, a bit further down. So it started out at 20, but when we could realistically use it, it was down at 12%. And we're actually seeing now that inflation is in and around 6%. And that's going to continue to drop off. So in July, it's going down to 4%, then to 2%, and then it doesn't have an end date for when it's going to be. It just dips off. So I don't know that that's happening there, but around about 2%. I imagine that 2% will just continue and just gets longer and longer as it fades out until the full 10 billion tokens have been released. Let's have a look at tokenomics, make sure I've gotten through everything. In terms of markets, well, obviously with its support from Binance, it is available on Binance. That's where the vast majority of the volume is. It's also available on Bitrue, which I have never heard of, but that is also where you can find it. Anyone ever used that exchange? I certainly haven't. Let's have a look at some of the other ones. Qcoin's there, Coinbase, Gate.io, so Bybit. So yeah, plenty of the big ones that we generally use. So that's good. It's what we like to see. There's order books seem to be relatively deep, and there's decent trading volumes on some of the big ones there. Bearing in mind it's only 5 cents a coin. It's doing 11 million just on Binance alone. Oops, what's happening there? In terms of social medias, so it's got a whole page dedicated to that. You can just click on these, it'll take you through to it, which is great to see. Plenty of different things. What's also useful is it just gives you a nice little summary of everything down here. I've gone on the Twitter. It is generally relatively active. They keep people up to date. There's videos on the YouTube just explaining each of the different elements. I didn't bother going on the Discord. I was a bit too busy, and I haven't been on Telegram or Reddit, so I can't validate those numbers. But it does have a very strong social side of things, which is, what we need ultimately. When the bull market returns and momentum picks up, we are going to need the hype that's going to be created from a social media team. So that's good to see. There wasn't much information on the team, which it was a bit annoying. So Dawn Song, she is the founder of it. She founded it in 2018. She's a graduate from University of Berkeley. That was basically all I got from an initial bit of research. I even tried to Google the team. I went onto LinkedIn, and although there is a LinkedIn page, there's so many employees and they don't give decent descriptions of who they are in terms of their roles. I just gave up on it. So that could be threshed out a little bit there. And the other positive thing I have to say is, if I can find it, ecosystem. Here we go. So, when we're looking at projects which are just starting out, one of the things we need, especially during a bear market, is to ensure that they have a runway for them to sustain, the darker times, the quieter times. And so the Oasis Network actually created an Oasis ecosystem fund. For those who aren't aware, effectively anyone that wanted to build on their ecosystem, there's a fund that they can dip into to provide assistance and help along the way. So, people who may initially struggle because they're even smaller than Oasis can call upon this fund to help them out in whatever way it seems to be. So that's a really positive thing to see. Obviously, you have to apply for it, and I'm not necessarily sure it's there. But the fact that they have that fund for the ecosystem, I thought it was 200 million, but it says it's 235 million here. So fair play for that one there. Fairly positive so far, but I do have some concerns. I think the first thing, it is still relatively new. I'd say that potentially it's untested. And I mean, obviously it's had some tests onto it, don't get me wrong, but I want to see some real big swingers putting it through its tested, and just seeing whether or not it can withstand that. Be interesting to see when the demand picks up, whether or not the paratime transactions per seconds, for example, live up to the hype and the numbers that they've been suggesting. But that's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. It's new, so you just need to factor that in, that we are still relying on more what they tell us it can do, rather than evidence and proof of what it can do. And speaking of that, there is relatively limited information available on Oasis Network. So for those of you who aren't aware, it's a fairly decent website called Token Terminal, where you can go in, you can search all sorts of different information, etc. And as you can see here, I've selected blockchains layer ones. We know this is a layer one blockchain, and it doesn't feature in here. Now, that's a shame because I can't find out any information within there. But there's a lot of others in here that do feature. I mean, the key at the bottom just suggests a few of them. You can actually go through by tokens themselves and individual projects. But so it's disappointing that you can't find out a lot of information on there, because actually what we really need to understand is how much revenue are they bringing in? Because ultimately, we've got a token here, which is an inflationary token. We know it inflates by 6% a year currently. And so if it's not actually earning any money, then, supply and demand ratio is just all wrong. And there's going to be far too much supply, which even then during a bull market would lead to the prices at least stagnating, if not falling. So I would like to try and find some more information. To be fair, I haven't given it that much time, so maybe it is out there. Maybe it's the fact that it is a privacy blockchain, and so that information just isn't available, readily available as some of these other blockchains that are out there. So something to just bear in mind, and maybe we need to have a look at. Let's see what else there is. In terms of the ecosystem, so I mean, go back to that first page. Oh, not that one. Ecosystem. Here we go. Hundreds of dApps built on Oasis. I was like, brilliant. Hundreds of dApps built on it. And then when I started to dig into, well, what are all these dApps? You know, I only got 43, and a lot of them, I mean, it could be just the data that's coming through is zero, or they're still in development. But, you know, there's none on this page that's really drawing in any form of volume or anything else. And then on the other page, everything's relatively limited. So, yeah, that, again, it just feels that the ecosystem is still very immature at the moment and perhaps needs some growth within there. And that's something that I would certainly need to monitor just to make sure that I was happy with it. But my final biggie is something that I mentioned 2 weeks ago when we talked about Dash, and there's loads of news articles that we posted in the Dash, so you can just have a look at those in Discord. But I just brought this one back up again. It is a privacy coin. At the end of the day, Rose is a privacy coin, and so we have other nations that have already banned the use of privacy coins, but the EU is suggesting that they may still look to ban privacy-based coins, and if they do, what's that going to do for Rose and also for how the project's going to function? So there's a big regulatory uncertainty over this, and yes, it may only be the EU, but let's face it, the US has not been particularly friendly towards cryptocurrencies at the moment, and I think it's only a matter of time before they at least comment on privacy coins, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. So again, certainly an area of concern and something to think about. I think in conclusion, do I think Rose is worth investing in? I go back to that. I'd like to understand revenue generation. I'd like to understand how the ecosystem is expanding out, because if we don't really have a particularly active ecosystem that isn't bringing in the revenue, then I just don't see how we can get from the price that we're currently at, 5 cents a coin now, all the way back up to 60 cents. I mean, it's a $300 million project at the moment. So, what activity is justifying that price? That needs to be there. We talked about the token inflation. So that's something that we need to think about. And I've also talked about the regulatory concerns. That they are things that I am worried about, despite all of the positivity. So for me, I'd never heard of it until last week. Well, should I say, at least hadn't come across it until last week. I think it's got potential. I think it has got great potential, and I think there's an opportunity there. I think the sector, if left alone by the regulatory bodies, could be a really positive sector and really put blockchain and data, ownership of data and data sharing on the map. But I'm probably going to just sit on my hands at the moment and wait. I may move into it, but if I do, 0.5%, 1% of my portfolio, so nothing particularly big, just a little play, and see where it goes. So yeah, I think I'm just going to keep it on the radar and go from there. Right, let me just have a look at some of the questions, comments. Entrepreneurial drug dealers. Well, yeah, there's got to be some. With the US cracking down very hard on Tornado Cash, weren't they after exactly what I just worry about myself? You're right. Had to refresh the webpage twice because the stream stopped. It started working straight away. Not sure if it's my internet. I think it probably is. Yeah, a few people have got problems with the internet. Leeds are winning 2-1. Okay, well, that's good to know. Thanks for that, Tim. Keep us updated as long as Leeds stay winning. Don't want to know if they're not. Okay. I'm going to have a quick swig of water, and then we'll move on to the next part. Hopefully, that was useful, guys. I'm going to do a 10-minute video on it. I think there's a lot of rambling on there. I could have condensed that a little bit closer, and I'll post that one out as well. So, yeah, hopefully that'll be useful. But now we're going to move from Oasis Network to, if I can find it, Dogecoin. And now, I did not think that I would spend the next 30 minutes, 30 valuable minutes of your time on a Tuesday evening and 30 valuable minutes of my time on a Tuesday evening on an Avenger call, not to mention the amount of time researching to talk about a meme coin such as Dogecoin. But actually, I think you'll be interested with what we've got to talk about here. And unless you've lived under a rock or you've not had social media for the last 24 hours, you'll be aware that Elon has been Elon again, and he has now changed the Twitter logo on your desktop application, not on your mobile phone, from the Twitter bird to the Dogecoin, logo. What do I mean by that? Well, here, top left-hand corner, I'll zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. This dog here is usually a blue bird, but in this instance, it is now this. What did that do? Well, the markets got particularly excited about that yesterday. Prior to Elon making the change, assuming it wasn't an intern that's now been fired, Doge was trading at 7 cents, and then off the back of that, it rose up to 10 cents. So almost a 50% increase off the back of that there. We'll go through a little bit of this news article, which will cover a few more of the figures. The futures tracking the popular Dogecoin token racked up 26 million in liquidations in the past 24 hours. So that's interesting. People going shorts were caught out. Actually, it's saying it's long saw 10 million. So they must have longed the top and then it's pulled back, because it did pull back. And shorts were 13. Interesting. This article is very disappointing. That was all it talked about. Anyway, that doesn't necessarily matter. The point of what I wanted to just mention was a few times when I've talked about my portfolio, and for those of you that have been savvy enough to look down the right hand side, you'll see in my shitcoin section, I have Dogecoin. And there's a reason I have Dogecoin, and it's because what I call the Elon effect, which we're about to go through. But Elon has been very clear for the past couple of years that he has some sort of kinship, shall we say, with Dogecoin as a meme coin, and he often tweets about it. Now, given the volatility of the markets, given the following that Elon has, almost godlike status, when he tweets about it, Dogecoin moves. And so actually, one could argue that having, regardless of your views on meme coins, but having a selection of meme coins that are favored by influential celebrities could be a useful way to make some money. And so we'll just have a look at some of the instances in which Elon has done this. And don't worry, I've had to zoom out so everyone can see. This is just a handful of ones that I chose. This is on Dogecoin. I got a little bit later on Bitcoin as well. And we'll go through each of these, try and do them in order. But the first real indication of Elon's support for Dogecoin was back at Christmas 2020. We'll start the zoom in now, I think. Otherwise, we will struggle. So 20 was this candle here, this green one. And so Elon tweets, one word, Doge. And off the back of that, we saw a nice climb up there before a collapse and then a recovery. But he started off, what was this bit there? 0.003, and it went up to 0.005. So almost a doubling of your funds there, about 75% increase. So bear in mind, the times we're talking about here, Dogecoin isn't even a penny, isn't even a cent. And it's really annoying because I was in the market at this stage, laughing at Dogecoin. And I was not laughing for much longer. So we get to January 2021, though most people didn't realize it, start of the bull run. And Elon tweets a picture of a dog and calls the magazine Doge. And that's it here. So this is it. That's all he did, nothing else. And immediately afterwards, it rocketed up. This, I think, was the biggest increase we saw. 10x, nearly 11x. It went from 0.007 to over 8 cents. So from 0.007, that's under 1 cent, to nearly 9 cents. So crazy increase in price. Yes, it pulled back, but then it continued to climb up. And then again, on the 1st of April 21, Elon tweets SpaceX will literally put a Dogecoin on the moon. That's a real shame. Last time I did this. Anyway, SpaceX is going to put a literal Dogecoin on a literal moon. It's a real shame because the tweet under this, the last time I looked at it, was Sam Bankman-Fried asking if he could get involved. And I just had a little chuckle just thinking about where we are now. with him. Now, what's interesting there is this had not as big a reaction, obviously, as the last one. And I'm certainly not saying that it caused this leg up here. But you can see it didn't cause that leg up there. But you can see that it did have some impact on the market there. What is interesting is most of the time, though, let me just change that cursor. It wicks up and then it pulls back. And so we just need to bear that in mind. Then we scroll across. Oops, that needs to be over there. 25th of Jan 22, Elon tweets he'll eat at McDonald's on TV if they start accepting Dogecoin. I think this was only the one instance I could find. So here we go. Where he tweeted it and it didn't really do anything. You know, nothing happened. So yeah, surprising that there. Again, 27th, Elon tweets Tesla merch can be bought with Doge. See a nice uptick and a pullback. This was a tweet here. Oops. And then on the 29th of June, so after the absolute rainfall caused by Terra Luna and Ratfat, this looks pretty flat. But actually, if we were to put it a bit more realistic, he tweets it, he'll keep supporting Dogecoin. I'll keep supporting Dogecoin the 19th of June. The bottom was on the 17th of June. And again, we see Doge rally on that day and near 60%. And then Elon takes over Twitter and we see a huge uptick again, end of November, end of October. This is a large one because now everyone's super excited because, now with his love for this cryptocurrency, of course, it's going to drive the price up. And so there we are, nearly 170% increase, 1.7 times. And then we've had what happened yesterday with Elon rebrands Twitter logo as a Dogecoin logo. And so far, it's pulled back. It did get to around about 40%, currently sitting around about 27%. So not a bad little play there. And as I said, I actually had a bag this time because I learned from my lesson. So when I got back in, I bought some Dogecoin. I don't give a toss about the tokenomics. I don't care how it's used or who uses it. But the fact that Elon can have such an impact on it, it's worth having. So I sold 50% of that yesterday. And I'll wait to see how the price reacts, whether I buy back in or I just take that and use it to buy something else. But what is interesting is it's not just me that thinks like this. So there are people writing genuine papers. I wasn't willing to pay the $32 it was to purchase this PDF, but it's a fairly long paper which goes through Elon Musk's Twitter activity and the impacts that it has on cryptocurrencies. The event studies 47 cryptocurrency related tweets. It finds a significant positive abnormal returns in trading volumes. However, it does go on to say that differs where Bitcoin and Dogecoin and some of the others. And there are concerns about his morals, freedom of speech, and investor protection, given that he does own Dogecoin. Now, he has said repeatedly that he hasn't sold any of his Dogecoin. I'm sure there'll be people that will be looking to check that kind of stuff, given the impact that he actually has. So the only thing I've really got to read on from this one here is the abstract. But considered in isolation, non-negative tweets from Musk, non-negative, why don't they just say positive? But anyway, must lead to significantly positive abnormal Bitcoin returns. Individual tweets do raise the price of Bitcoin by 16.9% or reduce it by 11.8%. So whether he's tweeting positively or negatively. And what I found even more interesting was this blog article, which you can have full sight from. And it lists some of these here, which I've come through. But look at this. So figure 2, I'll zoom in so we can see it a bit better. So we're going to cover the Bitcoin stuff in a moment, but just have a look. So Bitcoin changed his Twitter bio. Some of you have seen he added at hashtag Bitcoin. And within an hour, the price went from 32,000 to 37,500. Yes, it pulled back, but then it continued as more people found out. This is only 4 hours. It's only 6 hours. 6 hours, we were at 38,500. There's no reason other than that. Number of trades, we were like at 1,000 trades. And then within that same spike period, we went up 20 times to over 20,000 trades just for him changing his hashtag. Similarly with Dogecoin. So when he did the one word Doge, the price of it within an hour again, it shot up, come back down, pulled across. But I was more looking at the number of trades, trading volume. I mean, this is in millions, so it's kind of hard to tell. I don't know why they got the dollar sign there. It says trading volume, millions, but then they got dollars. It's thrown me off there. But a significant spike just off the back of that. Now, that could be going both ways. Buys and sells, obviously it can. Here we go, number of trades. So at 0, we had less than... It's when he posted a picture about Doge. So what's that? Maybe 500, 700 max, up to 20,000. The price went from below a cent to over 2.5 cents. So it's clear that people understand that he has some impact within this, and we should at least consider whether or not we can take advantage. I just want to take you back to, yes, he didn't cause the start of the bull run. But I tell you what, 2 coins or 3 tokens that generally started the last bull run was XRP, Ethereum, and Dogecoin. And at the moment, XRP, Ethereum, and Dogecoin are particularly pumped compared to the rest of the market. So whether or not we've got another alt season on our hands, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly stars are aligning. But what I wanted to just point out here is, should I take off the log? I mean, just look at that. It got all the way up to 72 cents. That's over 100x from that first tweet that he put in. It's just crazy, but that's where it got to. And so, yeah, I'm not saying he caused that, but suddenly people started to believe in the hype of, he's crypto friendly. He's got a bullish outcome on Bitcoin. At the time, you could purchase Teslas with Bitcoin, etc., etc. And so the momentum just kept on building as, people were FOMOing in, retailing in. I'm holding the bag just praying we get anywhere close to 75 cents again, because that would just be a fantastic return on the trade for something that, it could spike as often as the spiky fades do. Maybe not that often. So let's have a look at Bitcoin, because he's had a few instances of that as well. So at the same time, December 2020, as he first mentioned his love for Dogecoin, Bitcoin is my safe word. Then just prior to the bull run, he's got great timing. Elon adds a Bitcoin to his Twitter profile, and just look at the spike that day, up to 37. I mean, it went all the way back down to 34. It started out at 32. So again, don't know what else could have caused it. I've not looked into it, but the fact is, on that day when he changed his Twitter profile, Bitcoin shot up and then continued to climb. Then some people blame, I've put 2023 there. That's obviously not the case. Some people blame Elon for the first crash in May of 2021, because pretty much the day the crash happened, Elon tweeted that Tesla would no longer be accepting BTC as a payment until, I can't spell either, they resolved their high fossil fuel energy requirements. And, I remember people were absolutely slating Elon on Twitter, just calling him a pump and dump merchant. If he wasn't really in it for this, then why did he bother? Now, at the time, not Elon, but Tesla owned quite a lot of Bitcoin. And so there was some concerns that he was dumping it. I must have it somewhere. That was my safe word. What's this one here? Oh, yeah, 13th of June, that was it. So just go. So on the 13th of June, Elon tweets, he responds to an article from Cointelegraph because someone was saying that basically Tesla had sold all of their Bitcoin at the height of it. So he was like, it's inaccurate. Tesla only sold 10% of its holdings to confirm BTC. I would look at it. And then he says, when there's confirmation of reasonable, so around about 50% clean energy uses by miners with positive future trend, Tesla will resume allowing Bitcoin transactions. Well, interestingly, why I brought that one up is there's been a lot of evidence recently to suggest that we have actually tipped over 50% of renewable energy sources providing Bitcoin mining operations. So maybe we might see a return for that once it can be substantiated. So he initially tweets that may take payments again, and it's just after the bottom around about the beginning of June, and we start to see a nice uptick before it pulls back. And then, with impeccable timing, he is not caught because he's not doing anything wrong, but he appears on a video broadcast, not one of these fake ones you see, I should add, where he confirms in the live video that Tesla would consider taking BTC payments again. And it is literally on that green candle. And then from there, I'm not saying he caused it all, but he's got impeccable timing. He really has. He's like Nancy Pelosi with her trading and her stock picking. But he has got some great timing there, drives the price all the way back up. And then we are where we are. So this is it, where he says they'd most likely accept it. And that was on the 21st of July. However, last bit on the Elon stuff. He has been catching some flack recently, and some of you may have seen in the news that he is being sued for $258 billion over his Dogecoin tweets. It's a racketeering lawsuit after investors have accused him of intentionally inflating the price of Dogecoin. Plaintiffs in the US case against Mr. Musk used his social media presence and appearance on Saturday Night Live. So he did a skit on Saturday Night Live where he bigged up Dogecoin to drive up Dogecoin's price by more than 36,000% over 2 years and letting it crash. The filings allege that Mr. Musk used his pedestal as the world's richest man to operate and manipulate Dogecoin pyramid scheme. This article seems to have gone under the radar, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Lawyers for the tech billionaire described the lawsuit as fanciful work of fiction based on innocuous and often silly tweets about the cryptocurrency. There is nothing unlawful about tweeting words of support for or funny pictures about the legitimate cryptocurrency, his lawyer said. This court should put a stop to the plaintiff's fantasy and dismiss the complaint. Now, Dogecoin is currently worth $0.07. Don't know if that figure reminds you of something. It's down 90% from its all-time high. This article came out about 2 hours before Elon changed the logo. So this article came out yesterday. The lawsuit, I think, came out 24 hours before that. I think it was on even Monday. It must have been early hours of Monday morning, actually. And so you can't tell me, right? I follow Elon. I see a lot of his tweets. I see a lot of his comments he puts. He is someone that just likes to sort of roast people, or he just doesn't care what he's doing. And this latest stunt, I'll call it for want of a better thing, just seems to be a big finger towards this plaintiff's lawsuit, in my opinion. Now, he may fall foul of things because, whilst cryptocurrency is unregulated, we are seeing the SEC crack down on influencers who are potentially pump and dumping cryptocurrencies. But the whole point of pump and dumping is Elon Musk needs to have been selling. We don't know how much he owns of it and whether or not he is selling those at the times where he is most likely to profit from it. So, I'm sure there'll be people out there that will be trying to investigate that, and I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. But the timing of this latest Doge incident, it just can't be ignored given the size of this lawsuit and also the timing of it. And yeah, I just think he's messing with us. I really do. I think he now knows that we are a very knee-jerk reaction collective as crypto followers, and so he's just playing. He's just like, I'll just every so often just say something about Bitcoin or say something about Doge and just watch the market move and just have a laugh at everyone's expense for it. And that's absolutely fine. I'm happy he does it. I want him to continue because of where I sit with things. But there's one final thing that is going to prove to you that he is messing with us. So I'm going to have to zoom in again. This is amazing. So this logo here, yeah, I want everyone to watch it. Hopefully I get this right. I did it the wrong way around. Bear with me. To do that again. You ready? Try that one again. Did everyone see that? Hopefully you all saw it. So there is an Easter egg. There you go. Twitter Doge logo has an Easter egg And here's the secret to unlocking it. So if you put in a certain code on your keyboard after clicking that, you can get the logo to spin. So again, he is just messing with us. I mean, why bury an Easter egg in that if you're not just trying to mess everyone? You couldn't do it with the Twitter bird, but suddenly you can. And without going, well, I can show you the article. And it's not just any code. It's one of the more famous cheat codes that were out there from back in the day of old school gamers. So it's added to early video games, first used in 1985, Gradius. Never even heard of the game. But yeah, and he used to give you extra lives or power-ups. Power-ups, he is powering up Doge's price. I'm sorry, but yeah. I love him for it because I just think it's entertaining. But yeah, I think he is genuinely messing with us. The other thing, finally, just to say on this is, it's only, I believe, in the United States and in the EU in which this desktop app has changed. There were people reporting in from India that he was still the bird. So perhaps he's only chosen certain nations for which it to happen. But there we go. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Elon and what you think in terms of what he does or potentially can do and the power he wields within the market. Whether or not he has the ability to really move the price of Bitcoin and Dogecoin, and what your thoughts are on others. So perhaps Shiba or Floki. I mean, his dog is named Floki after all. I was thinking about holding a bag of each of those, but I'm going to hold off that. I think I'm going to, I will probably just stick with Doge. I think, you know, for what it is, Doge, if those two case studies are to go by, is the one that moves the most. And so I'm not really going to bother with any of the others. Right. Doesn't look like there's any comments, so we will move on from there. Okay. Let's try and find where everything is. Here we go. Okay, I mentioned this at the beginning. What we're seeing at the moment is Bitcoin on the weekly chart, and it's just these two candles here. I mean, yeah, I know we've seen some significant wicks, but for the last 3 weeks, granted there's 5 days to go on this week, Bitcoin has hardly moved. Yes, but its open and close price on the weekly candles have been virtually on top of each other. And so, you know, typically when we see that happen, you know, the stalling of the price, the stretching it out, it does mean that there's some sort of move, generally a large move coming. Whether that large move is up or down, we don't know yet. But it's just something that we necessarily need to start to pay attention to and consider. And for those of you that are still out of the market, you may hear those words of relief and think, great, there's an opportunity to get back in. And if it does go down, you need to start thinking about what your strategy for that is going to be. But if it does pump up, you also need to consider where you are and how exposed you are and what you want to do next. So let's have a look a little bit closer timeframes and see where we get to. Actually, before we do that, we sometimes look at this chart and it's a pictorial representation of percentage increase or decrease of the Bitcoin price on a monthly scale. Now, Q1 has historically been pretty good for Bitcoin. And we just finished Q1, we're rolling into Q2. And you can see that even in months of bull markets, we still have struggled. So 2021 wasn't particularly a great year in Q2. 2015 was also not particularly a great year, although that was just leading into the bull run of 2016. So probably still on the back end of the bear market there. 2017 is the only one that we really actually saw some positivity within it. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's a guaranteed red next 3 months, but we have had 3 good months on the trot. We've seen a decent increase of Bitcoin in the start of the year, in and around 60% up, 60-70% up from where we started. And so maybe we will now see a cooling off, at least, of the Bitcoin, a consolidationary period, maybe a retest of support levels, before we then move back up. So we go back to the chart and we have a look on the daily. We kind of saw this earlier and we talked about this last week. And although I'm trying not to be influenced by what I'm seeing here, I really am seeing the fact that we are forming some pretty decent wicks up here, and we cannot close above 20 28,800. And it feels like we're starting to roll over. Daily time frames do take longer to play out, so we got a bit more time within there. But we'll get rid of this now, and I'm trying not to see this, but it's hard to unsee. Potentially we've got, and I don't know where you want to draw the neckline, but I'd probably draw it there. Potentially we've got that double top that's forming. Now, a retest of around about 27,000, and then what it's going to do on the neckline is going to confirm that. But a confirmation to break that, for me, a close above 28,900 is what I'd want to see to invalidate that. But that, I can't unsee that. That's just where that one sits for me. And if that were to play through, I think we'd probably, I mean, we'd draw it with a very rough figures, but we're talking around about 25,500 in and around the top of these wicks here, which that's not surprising. I think 25,000, we throw on a few EMAs a little bit later on and have a look at things like High Block and a few others. It seems like a fairly sensible area. It proved to be quite a bit of resistance in the early part of the year. It would be healthy for Bitcoin to retest the 25k level, build support of that, and then go again. So I'm still thinking that we will see a pullback to 25k. I'm not so certain we'll see it any, I say any further. I'm not so certain we're going to see it right down to the lows that we saw at the back end of last year in the near future. Bearing in mind, it's taken us 4 months to get up here, and we've had some significant negative news events and incidents that have occurred, both within the crypto industry, but also within traditional finance. It's going to take something massive to move us down, a 50% drop. So yeah, we shall see, but that's where it is. In terms of other things that we can have a look at, things that I've seen people talking about, I mean, I don't know what, let me get a different chart up. A bit crap, that one. Let's just go for that. Sorry, let's just throw a few indicators on. I've not followed this, but I saw some people talking about it earlier. So let's have a look at the MACD, because some people are talking, there has been yet this bearish cross on the MACD, and so maybe actually, momentum at the moment now is starting to run out of steam, and maybe we are going to start to run off. And we've seen that in the past with these crosses. We do normally see a return down. So the daily, so pretty decent time rate. We don't normally talk about the MACD. We haven't done for a long time, should I say, at least. But I've seen a lot of people talking about that, so something to consider. In terms of throwing up a fib level, well, if we are going to fall, where could we fall to? So if we just draw that to there, I mean, the 50 is actually at 24,000, but the 382 is 25,000 on the nose, absolutely spot on the nose, which again, going back with that previous neckline plus the support or the resistance it was back in February, that to me makes a lot of sense in terms of where we're going, and that is one of the reasons why I am eyeing that level up. If I then were to throw on, and I don't want to overwhelm people with indicators, but if we just throw on, I don't know why I've got 3 of them, must have clicked it a few too many times. That's the one I wanted. Let me just change the color of it to be red and a bit thicker. Okay, and we'll get rid of the other 2 because we don't need them. The other thing that ties in with the 25k level is the 50 EMA on the daily. Now, obviously, unless we were to drop down there today, that 50 EMA is going to continue to climb. And so by the time we get down, we may actually see that around about 25,500. Doesn't mean that we don't wick down to 25k. So again, a few things there that are certainly drawing my attention in terms of going through. But the other thing, from a bullish perspective, I'll leave that indicator on, doesn't necessarily matter. It's just the fact that we are building our own support level in and around about 27,000. So we have retested 27,000 once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times over the past 18 days. So 50% of the time we've gone down and we've retested that. So that's forming, at least for itself, a decent level, which is, What we now need to see is momentum, either to the upside or to the downside. I haven't bothered getting trading light open, so we can have a look at the order books. I might just take a screenshot of it later and we can have a look there. But again, something that I would be looking to see. So where I am at the moment, I've not really added to a Bitcoin position except for my monthly direct debit, which went out yesterday, first working day of the month. So that's gone and purchased some more BTC. But other than that, I've just held on to what I've got. I think I mentioned last week I sold a little bit at 27,800. I haven't really bought that back in yet. I'm just trying to wait and see what happens here. I have still been buying other altcoins, and I'll explain why when we go and have a look at altcoins a little bit later on. I don't think there's really too much to talk about. We're down on the hourly here. Let's just go on to the 4 hour. Let's just have a look. I don't want to waste too much time. I mean, the only really thing to say, that without going through this in a lot of detail, and only because we covered vector candles last week, but there still are zones of trapped liquidity. This vector candle down here at the bottom of 27,000. So again, retesting that neckline, and to recover that vector candle seems like an obvious target there. And then when we look at these larger areas a bit further down, they're just validating. It's on the 1 hour time frame, but just you can see where the areas of trapped liquidity are. But that's again validating that potentially we've got a return in around the 25k. So maybe you want to mark up on your charts 27,000, 26,000, 25,000, because each of them have levels that you might be considering. Okay, we'll have a look at. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Apologies. Oh, I've done it again. I don't think there's anything to see on a high block, if I'm honest, but we'll run it just in case. I think it's going to be exactly the same as what we just saw. $27,100 and then about 25,100. What is interesting for me, just looking at this, what are we on? 7 days. Okay. So what you normally see, and I'll take this line that's on the bottom here, is it starts off relatively dark. It's dark, it's green, 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 gets firmer, firmer, yellow, 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 bright yellow. Market maker goes and takes it. What we've seen is the amount of shorts hasn't really increased over time. Certainly over the last couple of days, there's no one been adding to that position. It's been the same color for quite a while now. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not still appealing, but we're not seeing the short interest that perhaps we would like to see. And so, does that mean that market maker is going to have to look elsewhere? Or does it mean, you know what, because no one's interested in shorting at the moment because they think the price is going to go up, we will drive it down and take some of those long liquidation areas, potentially so. But I normally, what I would used to seeing is, these getting darker, and particularly close to price action, not darker, these getting brighter and brighter as you get closer to the time there. So potentially something to keep an eye on, but we'll just have to wait and see there. Why have I got this one open? Let's have a look at Doge. I mean, I think Doge is probably worth having a look at. So I drew this one on earlier just when I was doing some things, and I'm just having a look at the wicks to wicks. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's only 3 touch points at the moment, but it does date back to May 21. I just couldn't help but notice that this one did actually turn in and around there. But if we get it off the weekly and go onto the daily chart, what we're also seeing is, get my rectangle in. I mean, that's probably the next level I would be looking at it going to. So around about just over 11 cents. Dates back to March 22. It's come back down, tested it here. We had that spike up when Elon bought Twitter. Had a bit of a retesting around it through, retested it again. And then, yeah, that's where it is. The fact that it's broken out of this range at just, it's pulled back, but it's in this range now, 9 to 10 cents. There's a battle there. If it clears that, I'm not really holding too much weight to this trend line. I just don't think it's had enough touch points. Really, for me, I'd be looking in and around up there. I just want to have a look at some of the other ones. Just Dogecoin, obviously, we talked about it. It felt like it was right too. So Ethereum. So Ethereum has been doing very well. It's been doing well all year, to be fair. It was one of those ones where at the start of the year, we were saying that although it was increasing, it wasn't doing well because it was still struggling to get above the highs that it saw in and around November time. And we weren't really looking at Bitcoin dominance, but Bitcoin dominance has now become a bit of a forefront of our minds, and it was overtaken. But actually, the last week or so, whilst Bitcoin's been ranging, ETH has been making very slow progress each and every day. 0.5% here, percent there. It's up 3% today at the moment, and it's starting to climb up. Now, we talked about, I think I'm not sure if I'm now starting to get internet trouble. So apologies if it does cut off. I've just got a little bit of a warning. So maybe I'm finally getting it. Let's start closing some tabs or something just in case, shall we? Maybe that might help. Let's just close all of that. No, I don't want to do that one. Yes, I do, sorry. Okay, well, hopefully that's everything we need. Let's just close that one. Oh, no. Right, hopefully that's sufficient to keep it going. I've still got the warning. It's still buffering. So I might have lost you guys, but I'm going to keep talking until someone tells me otherwise. So yeah, we're only a week away from the unlocking. Now, whether or not this is a buy the rumor, sell the news, we'll have to wait and see. We saw a similar thing happen in the summer when we were making the merge across to Ethereum 2.0, and that played out, and then we saw a dump off that. So I don't own any Ethereum at the moment, but I am impressed with its movement at the moment. I mean, except for this dip down here, which was caused obviously by an initial reaction to the banking concerns, we seem to have some sort of channel that's forming there, and then a channel that's kind of forming. I know it's not the neatest, but you can see there's some respect that's been paid in and around there, and it's just at the top end of that. So maybe a retest down to 1700. But yeah, it's looking good at the moment. I'm just going to sit on my hands. I don't think the unstaking capability is going to cause a massive sell-off at all. We've gone over that when it was getting locked up, people were locking up anywhere from $200 to about $1,000, but they've seen it up at 4,500. So I think some people may move it around to free up a little bit of funds, but I think the vast majority will be happy with the 5% they gain and the steady growth that they're seeing there. So that's my thoughts with that one there. Dot's seen a nice little uptick at the moment. All I'd say about Dot and another quite a lot of the other altcoins is, yes, it is making some decent moves from earlier on in the week or from about a week ago. We still haven't cleared a lot of the previous highs. So for me, we're still in a bit of a downtrend. We're getting close to that interaction, but you can see on Dot, it's a pretty important level, 6.6 to 6.7. If we throw up a fib, I'm sure, where are we going to throw it from? Do it from down here to down there. 618, perfect level. It's hit that in the past. It's hit it a few times in the past, I think. In terms of fib extensions, retracements, that's one I always look at, and that and the 382. So keeping my eye there if it turns around. Got a decent bag of Dot now, so quite happy with whichever way it goes. But I'm just thinking right now, alts, although they may be doing well relative over the past week, they are still in and around levels that we saw, 5-6 months ago. And that's something that's important to mention. I'm sorry if I kind of sound like I go on about this a bit too much, but if you're not in the market at the moment and you're worried about what to do, yes, we talked about how the market cycle works. Bitcoin into Ethereum, into major alts, into shitcoins. Well, maybe this is a short bull market, and maybe we've had the Bitcoin pump. Altcoin dominance is suggesting that is it. We've hit that 48% level. Maybe it's time for turning around. But that actually still presents you with a relatively decent buying opportunity for altcoins, because altcoins haven't actually exploded that much this year, because the primary focus has been on Bitcoin. And so you are still able to buy some of your favorite alts at coins. Jesus, what's wrong with me? At prices that are relatively close to where they were 3 or 4 months ago. And and they've still got a long way to go to all-time highs. So yes, you may see people talking about Bitcoin dominance and how altcoins are getting absolutely destroyed against Bitcoin. They are. That's only a problem if you're buying right now with Bitcoin. If you're buying, because it could still go further down. If you're sat on the sidelines, like a lot of you are in stable coins, you don't need to worry about what the Bitcoin purchasing power of it is at the moment. Because even if you were to go straight from your stable coin to some crazy reason of buying Bitcoin and then Bitcoin to buying whatever altcoin you want, that transaction is going to happen in such a short period of time. You might as well do the calculation as if it was USDT straight into whatever altcoin it is. So you've got an opportunity to, have a look at some of your coins that you're interested in, tokens you're interested in, projects that you're interested in, and try and determine which one is right for you. And maybe don't be so put off by what you see from the Bitcoin price, because if you've got the right mindset in terms of what you want to do, and if you believe in that project, you'll still find that, in a while, good few months time, you'll look back at these prices quite fondly. So again, something for you to think about there. I know I talk about that every week. I'm conscious that perhaps people in the group watching the videos, listening to what we see on Discord, are just waiting for other people to tell them what to do. They've got a completely different plan. If you're just solely in it to follow someone else's plan, I guarantee you're not going to make it at some stage. So, yes, it's fine to follow that person's plan, but just make sure you understand why you're following what you're doing it for. I'll leave the rest of it there. BNB, unsurprisingly, had a bit of a knock yesterday with the Binance FUD, but it's pretty much bought back up. But again, can you see, similarly to sort of where, actually, Dot's had a bit of a decent increase. That's probably not the best example. But what we've seen here is it is still falling over. Again, had a decent bounce during the banking crisis side of things, but at the moment, really struggling to make anything. There seems to be some clear falls. I mean, if we drop this onto the 4 hour, we could actually probably see, sort of a drop 1, maybe a drop 2, maybe into the drop 3 now, but that wick got bought back up, so maybe we're just waiting to see what the next move is. So something to think about there. I'm trying to see what the range is. This is pretty much March. In February, we can see in it. I mean, it's just range for the month. Bitcoin, it's ranged for the last 2 weeks, but this has ranged actually nearly 2 months. L1, so not too bad. Glimmer, I'm actually surprised. Glimmer's got an unlock, I think, in a few days. So we might see some negative sell pressure there, as I think, I can't remember how many tokens it is, but it's in the hundreds of millions. Get released, but we're actually seeing on the 4 hour at least, starting to climb out of this a little bit. Link, again, doing relatively well within this sector, but it's just not breaking through. And we did a video on Chainlink not so long ago, and we talked about that range of sort of $9.50 to $5.50, and anywhere around anything under $7.50, it spent more time above that than under that. So you were getting value for money. We're still, despite the climb that we've had this month in March, we still haven't cleared $7.50. So we're still in the bottom half of that range that we've been in for the last 9 months. Matic is one exception, again, some great strength here. Bit annoyed out of bag to buy at $1.07. And as you can see, the wick. I mean, I was so unlucky. It didn't get down to, I was bang on the number. That was my fault. Should never have done it. It got down to 0.7. So that didn't get filled and it's gone that way. But unfortunately, that's just the way those sometimes go. What we can see, though, is at the moment we're running into, I don't want to say trouble, but we're running into an area which it's had some reactions from before. So maybe there's an opportunity there. Again, get the fib up and have a look at that. Where do you do it from? That's the problem. Let's do it from this one here. Oops. So maybe we get to 115.6, sort of taking out these sort of wicks here, and a lot of, let's just draw the rectangle on it, shall we? Don't worry, I'm going to tidy that up in a second. So there to something like that. As you can see, there's definitely been some interactions in the past there. 618 level, relatively important. We throw that onto, where's my market maker one with Matic? I mean, it's been a strong climb on the hourly, so it's definitely leaving some unclaimed vectors to come back for, but we are entering into an area, a psychological area of maybe seeing it turn around with the HOUs for the high of the week. near, again, you know, for this year, except for unless you go in right at the beginning of January, it's only really ever got down to about $1.75. So it's not that far away from it. And, you know, given where it got to, it's, you know, almost $1 higher than its current price now is where we saw in February. So again, don't be afraid because you've seen it climb. Any of your favorite altcoins have a couple of green days. Just look at it, squeeze the scale, have a look at it from a bigger perspective. I think you'd be quietly surprised. The one I want to touch on is gas BTC. I haven't done it yet, but I'm considering pulling the trigger on gas BTC. If there is going to be a mini alt season, if we have rejected from the 48% level on the BTC dominance, then maybe we might see a spike. And it's got into a range. I would prefer it to get below $11.50, which it did a couple of days ago or yesterday during that FUD, but I missed it. So maybe I could have had an opportunity to get in there, but we're getting close now. So I'm weighing up the options of getting in to that. And if I do, just waiting for a spike. And if we take it out into the daily, I was kind of having a look at, I mean, I'm not worried about that spike. You know, I want to get spikes up to probably a bit higher than that. Maybe even to about 115 or 15, should I say. Just one quick look at the dominance chart. Bent your ear off for 1 hour and 42 minutes. It looks like it's ranging like BTC. There's no surprise there. BTC's not done anything for days, and we've been knocking on the 48% all that time. So we basically know what happens here. We talked about it for the last 2 weeks, but this chart starts going north, Bitcoin price is climbing, and whilst USD values of altcoins may climb, they will not be climbing at a fast rate. And what will be hurting is any BTC pairs you have. If people are talking about an alt season, then the alt season is going to be the reverse of that. BTC needs to come down. BTC dominance, needs to come down. If that starts falling, at the rate that this climbed, then we are going to see alts skyrocket. How sustainable that is, I don't know. But as I mentioned to you, those outliers the last time, Ethereum, Doge, and XRP, all of them are having good runs at the moment, whether manipulated or not. They were the outliers last time. So maybe we are seeing that turnaround from the 48%. So yeah. That's probably it for me. Like I say, we're going for about an hour and 40. There's not been too much questions or comments in the chat box now, and it could be because you guys are all having signal issues, which is fine. But I think unless anyone's got something they want to add now, then what we'll do is we'll probably call it. I'll give you a few minutes or a minute to add while I just cover over some things. Good news is Tim hasn't updated me on the football results. So hopefully I'm going to look at my phone and that'll be okay. When you can boost a crypto by 30% by swapping out a logo, it's crazy. Yeah, I know. In theory, you could just have boosted any crypto. Well, so one of the details within the study, I don't think I probably went into as much detail, suggested that actually it doesn't have as much sway on some other crypto. So Floki, the name of his dog, has a crypto after that now. Yes, he put a picture of them up as the new CEO, but it didn't have the massive spike up that we've seen with other ones. It did have a positive climb, but I think he knows where he is with that one. Sheeb and Floki have looked a lot weaker in recent times. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it doesn't look like there's much coming through. So just want to say thanks again, everyone, for coming through. If you're watching it back, I hope you enjoyed that. We do have a research token for next week. I think I've got another one after that. I think I've got 2 left. And as I said to you, failing that, whenever I don't have one, I'm just going to start going through the big boys, top 20, even Bitcoin. We'll go through where that sits. I believe there's a trading pub on Thursday. I'll be here next Tuesday. Just bear in mind, it's bank holiday, it's Easter weekend, so markets will be closed on Friday and on Monday. So it gives, crypto won't be, obviously, but you know, could be more susceptible to retail. So something to definitely bear in mind in. But other than that, I just want to say thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night, everyone, and I will speak to you all soon. Cheers now.